Hey there, I'm Mark from Spectrum Pulse, and today it's a big one, the newest project from Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, Wild God. At some point in the past couple of years, Nick Cave found God, or maybe he always had, and we're just catching up to his experience. Because after a very difficult decade of challenging but brilliant records in the 2010s, and the collab album Carnage with Warren Ellis in 2021, the sort of project I rarely revisit but always appreciate when I do, I'm of many minds when it's come to this shift, if it's even a shift at all. On the one hand, it's been notedly harder to ignore a certain conservatism creeping into Nick Cave's public statements and actions, where even if I can understand it's coming from a place of empathy and compassion and reverence for the art, good intentions can only take you so far, especially when you're on record you're ascribing a religious intent. If you've been turned off by some of the stuff he said around free speech and separating the art from the artist and cultural boycotts, specifically with, yes, I'm going there, around Israel, where he has no love for that nation's government or actions, but feels like the art should not be deprived from the people, as that would encourage isolationism. Okay, I get the sentiment, but I don't think the argument really accounts for scale or material impact. I get why you, and hell, I find it frustrating. But on the other hand, if there's gonna be someone to whom I'm gonna give the benefit of the doubt on his albums when it comes to finding and exploring God, having lost children, felt his marriage hang by a thread while seeing his own confidence in controlling the narrative sundered, it would be Nick Cave. And even then, it feels less like religious doctrine than Gnostic ecstasy, where the communal connection through performance and a faith in something beyond what he can even know definitively, it leads to the inexplicable, the primal, the ineffable. So across many of these half-improvised pieces, you can tell Nick Cave is trying to explore this surrender to something beyond himself. What would drive a man like him to find faith and healing, even if it's in a power that he cannot fully understand? What might spur forth the ability to move past grief, see a miracle come through in love's reunion, or those we have lost along the way, letting them go on? And interestingly, he juxtaposes the wild divine presence that might seek out worshippers, the suffering God, with, well, the artist who seeks out listeners, where the suffering of them both might be made whole in the right of performance. And it's very telling that he said he was planning to call this album Joy, but he recognized that it could be misconstrued as pure happiness, when this sort of soaring exhilaration can be searing and painful when pressed through humanity's weakness. And it's a different sort of transformation, dare I say transcendence, that can be explained in plain language. It's also why I might challenge anyone framing this religious experience as purely conservative. It's more complicated. It is subservient to a higher power, but not one that can be ruthlessly structured or commodified or to command, the latter of which Nick Cave loathes, and the universality across any faith over doctrine is a welcome complexifier that doesn't slot easily into normalized structures and routines of modern religion. It is certainly compelling. It could have set up Nick Cave for his most dramatic of crescendos and powerful moments to date, and man, I wish this album came close to sticking that landing. Part of this is a bit of a holdover of a complaint I had with Carnage and even some of the 2010s albums, where the backing arrangement can feel so willowy and frail, especially in the backing vocals, and now attempting to evoke gospel, it's really not convincing me compared to the muscle the Bad Seeds used to muster. The switch-ups on the title track and conversion should hit way harder than they do for me, and really the only time I kind of bought into the choirs was on the closer, As the Waters Cover the Sea. But this is compounded by a new addition to the mixing and production, Dave Fridman, and while he did a good job mixing with Magdalena Bay earlier this year, I have had hang-ups with this guy for years now, and I don't think Nick Cave got nearly as much power and majesty and mystery this time around. The very saturated mix is a lot muddier, especially around the drums. Why does that snare sound so muted compared to the cymbals? And then the vocal production choices really across the board can feel really choppy, where even if I'm not bothered by some of the occasional auto-tune or the odd filter, it can be really distracting. And while the arranged strings and swell of backing vocals certainly add a bit more, I am really struggling to hear the driving tunes or any sense of groove that would help these crescendos really go off. I am shocked so many folks are apparently lukewarm on Cinnamon Forces. I think with that piano line, it's probably got one of the best melodies on this album. That might be an issue. There should be more of them. And as much as I've defended Nick Cave's free-form, semi-improvisational style in recent years in writing, look, especially here, even if I can accept he's pulling from a more unstructured and primal place, the lyrics feel increasingly inelegant. They lack the poignant, poetic flair they used to have. Referencing Push the Sky Away on the title track, it only reminds me of a more skeletal but tuneful album that landed way more effectively for me. And given that Joy feels like an amplification of something I have already heard done better on Ghost Teen, even if I think the song is one of the best on the album, it's frustrating to hear the project as a whole fall short of those heights. Yes, I think the eerie synths and the melodic interplay on Final Rescue Attempt, it kind of works for the messy romantic reunion, and Oh Wow is a beautiful, borderline Bon Iver-esque tribute to the late Anita Lee. It is gorgeous, especially with that really poignant sample of her at the song's end. It's probably leaving it as my favorite on the album overall. But as a whole, look, folks, this was another project I was really anticipating in 2024. Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds is one of my favorite acts of all time. And while I think this is indeed very good, the production just leaves me much cooler on it than I would like. Maybe I could have predicted it after Carnage, but for as much as Nick Cave has found this deeper faith, well, to quote one of my favorite songs of this year, all my friends are finding new beliefs. And yet this doesn't quite have that same transcendence. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you want to hear more, please be sure to like, share, drop comments, subscribe. Believe you me, this is going to come across as potentially contentious, a little bit more negative. Folks, I really wanted to love this album, but the production just did not click for me. This should go so much harder than it does, and even in comparison with Nick Cave's broader catalog, it does not get there for me. I think his performance is more dynamic, but again, everything around him is just not clicking, and I wish it did. And well, you know, not even that. There's moments that click, but just never holistically. And even if I can respect the themes, you gotta follow it through in execution. That happens. Beyond that, though, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. And if y'all want to get involved in helping support the channel, well, I would say go to my Patreon, because again, you can get access to my schedule and my Discord server if you want to go that way. But I do have something coming up that y'all will want to be paying attention to in the upcoming weeks. Stay tuned for that. And until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.